Hello and welcome back to Bookish, and welcome to my Saturday Hodgepodge, my weekly wrap-up of books, booktube stuff, bookish things, anything else I want to talk about. I got my new glasses. I'm sure you could all tell a massive difference between these glasses and the old one, but I can actually see, so that's good. That should help with my reading, being able to actually see. I want to start off this week, Saturday, by reminding you of something I've been posting about quite a lot this week, and that has to do with my friend and fellow booktuber Amy from Amy Gets Lit Media, whose home was devastated by Hurricane Ida. She lives in Louisiana. As of today, which is Friday, I always film Friday, post Saturday. As of today, they are looking at weeks without power. Not only that, but their bank has been seriously damaged by the storm, and they have kind of limited access to money. They've applied to FEMA and I'm sure to their insurance for some relief, but that's kind of slow in coming. Thanks to generosity of people here on BookTube, really helped them to buy the generator that Amy needed to keep her oxygen machine running. If you didn't know, Amy is also seriously ill. And so the generator helped with that. They were able to clear some of the property, and her husband is beginning work on repairing the house and making it more secure and kind of weather tight. But money is still an issue, and it will be, in part because the generator eats up a lot of gas, and as I'm sure you're aware here in the United States, or anywhere else for that matter, actually here in the United States, our gas prices are usually lower than everybody else's, but gas is really expensive. So I'm going to leave a link to her PayPal account down below. If you can, please contribute a little more. For my Saturday Hodgepodge videos, usually about 300 people watch these videos each week. If each person just contributed $5, that would make an incredible amount of difference. So, if you can, please do. If you don't want to or can't, that's okay too. Just trying to help Amy out as much as we possibly can here. I've really kind of backed off and stopped doing book tags, but I wanted to do one today as a part of my Saturday Hodgepodge, which I do occasionally, and then next Tuesday I'm going to have a tag extravaganza on Tuesday, and I'm going to try to do all the tags that I've been tagged to do over the last, I think probably about 6 weeks. I'm going to try to do them all on one Tuesday and make just one big video with tags if I can figure out what all those tags were. But there were some really good tags, and people were kind enough to tag me, and so I wanted to get that done. But today what I want to do is the Mookse and the Gripes Bucket List Books tag, which was created by Sean the Book Maniac, and he created it because he was inspired by a podcast, a website called the Mookse and the Gripes, which talks about books, which he really liked. I'll leave information for all that down below, but essentially what you're just supposed to do is to come up with 10 kind of bucket list books that you want to read, and then give people an option for, suggesting a book that you're going to read, I think by the end of this year or maybe by 2022. So for me, bucket lists of books are kind of, well, they aren't really something I do. There are books that, single one-off books that I do intend to read someday, like, War and Peace. I've never read that. And so there's that, but I have a tendency to think in terms of authors, either authors I want to read more from, primarily authors I want to read more from, or types of books I want to read more of. So I'm going to take this opportunity just to kind of mess with Sean's format here and talk about 10 authors or types of books I want to read more of that would be on my bucket list. So I'll just start off with the top. Honoré Balzac, one of my favorite authors, certainly my favorite 19th century French author. Tons of books out there. I've read a lot of his major works that are easily available in English. I have some smaller works I'm going to start working through this fall, but I want to do that because I just love Balzac, and I don't think I can ever be a Balzac completist, but at the same time I don't think there's ever going to be a time where I don't want to read a book by Balzac. So for me, he's number one on my list. I would like to read all of Louise Erdrich's books. I know that Britta from Britta Bowler and I think it was Terry B. had a project last year to read all of Erdrich's published novels in order. I can't really do them in order because the 4 or 5 I've read come from all over the place, but I definitely want to finish all the works of Louise Erdrich, because I really like her books and her writing and what they're about. I want to read all of James Baldwin. Kind of a late to the James Baldwin world reader. I went all the way well into my 50s before I ever picked up a James Baldwin novel and read it. And the first one I read, Go Tell on the Mountain, completely blew me away. And I want to read everything. I want to read all the fiction. I want to read the nonfiction. I want to be a James Baldwin completist, so that's a bucket list thing for me. William Trevor, one of my favorite writers, the Irish primarily short story writer. I started, not this year, but last year, my March of the Mammoth book was William Trevor's short stories, which is, over 1,000 pages long, I believe. I think I read about half of the stories in that collection. I'd read some of the others in other places. I've read a lot of his novels, but he was really quite prolific and he wrote a lot. And I would like to read a lot more William Trevor because there's just a beauty in his writing, in the emotion he's able to evoke from very simple stories and sentences. Anyway, he's just a beautiful writer, and I want to read more of him. Last year, I read Barchester Towers, is that it? By Anthony Trollope. And that book really made me fall in love with Trollope. And Trollope, like Balzac, there are far too many books that Trollope wrote that I'm never going to get to reading, but reading more Anthony Trollope is certainly a goal of mine. I believe this year for October, I'm going to try to read Dr. Thorne. I downloaded a copy of it onto my Kindle, and so that's my plan, one of my plans for October. I also do want to finish Remembrance of Things Past by Marcel Proust. I read the first 2 volumes of that 3 years ago, for March of the Mammoths, and I liked it, but Proust is a really intense reading experience, and one of those authors where, for a slow reader like me, I have to go even slower than I normally would. Definitely an author I want to read a lot more of, if not, all of, in terms of her novels, are Virginia Woolf. I've really only read To the Lighthouse and A Room of One's Own are the only 2 Virginia Woolf books I've read, which, feels kind of criminal to me now, and I definitely want to begin reading more Virginia Woolf and try to complete reading her works as well. If you watch my channel, you may notice that there is a lack of Russian authors on my channel list, and I almost never read a book by a Russian. I struggle really in a real way with Russian authors, but I am determined to read a novel by Dostoevsky other than Notes from Underground, which I read a long time ago, which is short. I'm determined to read Dostoevsky sometime in the future, and so I would definitely make Dostoevsky one of my kind of bucket list authors, an author I want to read multiple works by, before I die. That's something that definitely an author, and Russian writing in general I want to look at. And then Edith Wharton, the only Edith Wharton novel I've read is House of Mirth, and I really liked it. I want to read more of her work too, and that's definitely a hole in my kind of classic American reading, which I want to fill by reading as much Edith Wharton as possible. And then the last thing I put on my list I want to read, because I couldn't come up with a 10th author, was I want to read more works of history, but written by women. Now, go ahead and roll your eyes now if you want to, but I have a really specific reason for this. Over the last, 5 to 10 years, even before I got on BookTube, some of the works of history that I've liked the most, that I've enjoyed the most, are works of history that were written by women. Hang on, I'm forgetting one. Now, part of me thinks that this is because I am a reader with an internal monologue that I hear, I sub-vocalize, and I hear the words as I read them. And I have a tendency, I think, as I hear the words I read them written by a woman author, to hear a woman's voice and not necessarily my own. That may sound weird, and I believe that to be true, even though subconsciously maybe that's not true. But I've read a lot of really good works of history and biography by women in the last few years, and I want to keep doing that because there's something, not just in the scholarship, but something about the way in which those works are written, which I think adds a real freshness, a real kind of life to the history reading I've been doing. One of my first discoveries as a female popular historian is Candace Millard, whose book about Teddy Roosevelt's journey down the River of Darkness, chronicling the book The River of Doubt, which is great. I read Stacy Schiff's Cleopatra this year, and Stacy Schiff is a great writer. And, talk about doing something great with a relatively limited amount of source material. I thought this was excellent. I buddy read SPQR by Mary Beard with Noel, the book group, which was really good, and I thought this was, again, fresh, and the voice was lively, and the perspective was new. This summer, I read No Modernism Without Lesbians by Diana Husuami with Stephanie Cohen. We buddy read this, and this was great, a group biography of authors and author supporters who are lesbians around the time of, in the 1920s and 1930s. Just really, really good. For the BookTube Prize, I read Red Comet by The Short Life and Blazing Art of Sylvia Plath, a huge chunky biography by Heather Clark. And while I had some issues with some of Clark's choices in terms of the level of detail she included about certain things, I thought the book was a remarkable work of scholarship. Last year, one of my favorite books was You Never Forget Your First, a biography of George Washington by Alexis Coe, which I just thought was funny and irreverent, but solidly researched and offered kind of a new perspective on George Washington. And then I also read a couple of years ago, or maybe last year, Queen Victoria, 24 Days That Changed Her Life by Lucy Worsley, kind of a popular British historian, which just looks at 24 days in Queen Victoria's life, as it says, and how they impacted her reign in England. And I really liked all of those books. And so I want to keep going that direction. I want to keep reading books. I have lined up to read Square Haunting for Nonfiction November this year, and some other books, but that's an area in which I definitely want to read more. So there you go. There is the Mookse and Gripes bucket list books tag. I'm supposed to let you vote on a book, one of those books or one of those choices you'd like me to read for the end of the year. So please leave a comment down below about which one of those things you want me to read more of, or which one of those authors or types of books you want me to read more of, and I'll try to fit that in my 2021 plans. I also just wanted to mention, talk about bad timing. 2 weeks ago, I made a Saturday Hodgepodge video, which was about Texas, in which I talked about, kind of what is for me the mixed blessing of living in Texas, and I had some songs at the end about Texas, and then, Texas just decided to turn itself into even more of a third world country with a third world attitude, but a first world economy, at least so far, with the ridiculous new anti-abortion law that Texas has enacted and our ridiculous Supreme Court has codified and allowed, which basically means that any Texan can rat out any other Texan for having an abortion after the 6-week time period and get $10,000 as a bounty on women seeking abortions. There are no exceptions for rape, incest, or health of the mother. Written into the law. It's anyone. And if if you're out there thinking that, oh well, you should know you're pregnant within 6 weeks, that's ridiculous. And I don't want to get into topics where a guy probably certainly isn't expert, and I don't want to mansplain you anything. So yeah, 6 weeks is not nearly enough time, and the law is restrictive. And from my point of view, it's just a huge step backwards in terms of rights. And I'll point out something that somebody else pointed out to me, or I read somewhere else. Guys, if you don't think this applies to you, if they can take basic rights away from women, they can take basic rights away from everyone. They are, Republicans in this country, and led by our ridiculous governor here in the state of Texas and our ridiculous state legislature, are doing more to turn the clock back, not to the 1950s, but to the 19th century, than in any other time in our history. And it is a path towards authoritarianism. White male supremacist authoritarianism is what we're headed at. Look at the picture of the grinning Texas state idiots who enacted this law, making the heart sign with their hands, while thousands, hundreds of Texans die every single day of COVID-19 because our incredibly stupid governor won't even allow schools to put in place a mask mandate, because we have an incredibly low vaccination rate for the size of state we are. And tell me this thing that they're doing about life and about having a sanctity for life means anything. These people are not pro-life, they are pro-power. and they want power over women, and they want power over all of you, and they want power over people of color, and they want to prevent people like that from voting. And the only way I can see to solve that problem is to turn out in huge numbers in 2022 and 2024 and vote their asses out of office. Well, you got a rant, so no music. Anyway, there you go. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. And as always, thank you for watching.